Welcome to The Crumbling. It's a podcast about information ecosystems, and for this series of episodes, how those impact other ecosystems. A spoiler alert, it's not pretty. I'm Sophia Florence, and I'm here with my co-hosts.
I'm Andrew Hillary. I'm here with my co-hosts.
Hi, I'm Davin Dubois. I'm here with my co-host,
Dubois!
Unnamed Muppet 12.
Muppet 12?
Hi, how you doing? Hey, Muppet 12, I'm Muppet 9/11. I bet you never forget me.
I'm breaking.
This is a very serious show.
I'm physically...
God damn it, Muppet
incapable.
12. Muppet 12, get the fuck out of here. I'm so sorry.
I do like that, though. You know the, why is 6 afraid of 7? Because 7, 8, 9. I've never, sat down and, really done the math, but, there needs to be why nobody trusts 8 because or 10 because never 9 11. Look, there's a lot of work to be done. What I'm saying is there's something there, and I'll never forget. All right, we've mentioned 9/11. I'm done for the episode. You can do the rest. I'm fine. I'm in the passenger seat now.
How are you guys doing tonight?
I'm tired.
I'm fine.
Tired, but crushing it.
I still have not been smoking. So
Hell yeah,
what I've
proud.
realized is that I'm experiencing severe time dilation. And I assume that this also has to do with the political climate and the fact that 25,000 things happen every single day now. But I was sitting here and we're recording this, peek behind the curtain. We're recording this January 29th. Christmas feels like it was a year and a half ago.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
It does feel like that.
I think it's, again, without smoking, my every minute is an extended period of suffering for me. So, it's a combination of things, but time is real fucking weird for me right now. Overall, I guess I'm fine. I got a Biscuit. The cat is...
Hell yeah.
He is attacking me for pets. He's not biting me. He is just headbutting me hey, dude, you know what time it is.
Hell yeah. We got to start putting Biscuit pics up on the Patreon. By the way, if you're
that's
listening,
right.
we'll put some Biscuit pics up on there. If you guys are looking to support our podcast, you could go to patreon.com/thecrumblingpodcast, and you could potentially see some Biscuit.
Hell yeah. I'll send pictures of all 3 cats. I don't give a fuck.
Hell yeah. That's what I'm talking
I got a picture
about.
of Gravy wearing sunglasses.
I don't want to be biting Cat's whole bit though, because she's got the pictures of Heater, Cat Abagazala. She's got the...
God, what a good kitty.
I fucking love Heater. I pay $15 a month for that. I pay extra just because I like that cat so much. That's a good fucking kitty.
We talk about a lot of fucked up stuff on the show. What if we just threw out the script today and just talked about different cats that we like?
We should do that as a bonus episode one day for our Patreon listeners.
That needs to be a decompression episode. I like Tony the Tiger.
I also
Not a real
like...
cat!
No, Tony the Tiger is very real, and he's also a fucking gay icon.
Okay, well, I respect his work within the community. I respect him as an ally. I do not respect him as a two-dimensional drawing.
How do you think them flakes got frosted, baby? All right. All right, let's talk about some fucking climate change.
God damn it.
I would say this past week is the greatest example of climate change, considering fucking wildfires down south is having snow. Just there.
This has been a weird year for outside. Outside of a building. A couple different places in the country, you go outside a building, you're like, oh, this isn't normal.
The shit has hit the fan.
There's been snow on the ground in Pittsburgh, and it's not like it's snowing every day. There's just been at least some snow on the ground the entire year. This has never happened before. We'll get snow, but it'll melt. We'll get it a couple times a winter. A little bit of snow, it melted. It's 40 degrees for a couple days, and then it drops back down. There's just been snow every day for this entire month. It's fucked up. I don't like it.
Yeah. In Connecticut, we actually usually get a lot of snow, and in the last couple of years, we are not getting basically any snow, and that's been jarring in its own way. And don't get me wrong, I don't like snow, but we would usually get blizzards every year. You'd get one, and I remember the last big blizzard we got was 2011, and that same year we got bitch slapped with that hurricane. New York got all messed up, and because I live on the opposite end of Long Island Sound, it ends up kind of always
Getting a little
buried.
I will say I like snow a lot for the first day, and then it's fuck this shit.
Yeah. Then it gets brown. Like the snow turns all gross because people get all dirt in it. Mm-hmm. They're like, I shoveled it everywhere, and now it looks like big frozen duties on the side of the road.
But you know what? Now that Donald Trump's president, I bet you he would implement a policy like, we're going to rake the snow. We're going to keep the snow clean and white. It's going to be lovely and pristine. I decided that I'm never going to be able to do a good Donald Trump impression, but I think doing a bad one is fine.
Like, doing a bad one is funnier. I think every time that you try to do Donald Trump, you should just do Borat.
I really only have basically all of my impressions just kind of descend into guy from Pittsburgh who is also an Adam Sandler voice. Like,
so are you Adam Sandler doing a Pittsburgh impression or Pittsburghian doing Adam Sandler?
it's like a triple. It's like Pittsburghian doing Adam Sandler doing Pittsburgh. So it's a mess. It's a fucking mess. But you know what? It works.
Perfect. All right.
Hell yeah. Let's do the script.
All right. Hell yeah. I sent you some notes. You guys all got the script. Let's go. So catching up from last episode, we had talked about the discovery of potentials for climate change by people with silly names. And then we talked about the discovery that climate change was happening from people with sometimes silly names and sometimes kind of normal ones. In the 1950s specifically, which prompted the American Petroleum Institute, the trade organization of many companies in the petroleum industry, both back then and now, to fund some good old-fashioned disinformation. They said that increased carbon dioxide was not a big deal, or that it wasn't their fault, or that the actual issues were something else. And, you know, that's never the case. And all of those things can't be true at once. So in December 2024, a month and change before this was recorded, the 12-month average of CO2 in the atmosphere was 424.6 parts per million, according to data from the NOAA. If you're unfamiliar with the term parts per million, think of air like a sea of particles, mostly because it is. Some of them are big molecules, some are small molecules, some are single atoms, and some are little droplets of vapor, and there's some other stuff mixed in there too, some dust and stuff.
Molecules.
For every million of those you have, about 425 of them are carbon dioxide. And yeah, that doesn't sound like a lot, but carbon monoxide at this level could kill an average adult in 3 hours. So it really is the dose that makes the poison on this kind of thing. And before the Industrial Revolution, the value was about 280 parts per million, so we've gone up by about 50%. And one thing that's crucial to understand here is that carbon dioxide isn't the only greenhouse gas we're working with, and it isn't even the worst of them. Methane is another one, which is often produced by animals through a type of fermentation that occurs during digestion. And according
to farts.
Yeah, the methane is produced before the farts, but then it comes out with the farts and the burps.
For the listeners at home, I made a big pot of chili this week, and I've been eating leftovers of it for every day. So I would like to personally apologize for the methane that I, Andrew Hillary, am adding to the atmosphere.
Andrew is trying to do a climate change.
I'm not trying to. It's a byproduct. Look, what I was trying to do was eat delicious chili, and I've achieved my goal.
Hell yeah. I'm proud. But yeah.
Yeah, try keeping up with the show whenever I have to apologize for farting.
So according to the International Panel on Climate Change, methane can be up to 86 times more potent than CO2 at producing higher temperatures over a 20-year span. So between CO2, methane, and other greenhouse gases, we've seen a roughly linear increase since the 1970s, corresponding to the same degree of linear increase in global average temperatures. Two things are noteworthy here. The global average temperature has gone up 1.63 degrees C, or almost 3 degrees Fahrenheit, since the 1920s, around when temperatures really started to leave the normal cycle and rise rapidly. And two, that's a global average temperature, and it's not localized. In some areas, especially the colder parts of the planet, they've experienced upwards of a 6 degrees Celsius or 10.8 degree Fahrenheit raise in temperature, and those kinds of temperature changes are causing a lot of Arctic ice to melt.
Arctic sea ice reaches its minimum extent, the area in which satellite sensors show individual pixels to be at least 15% covered in ice each September. September Arctic sea ice is now shrinking at a rate of 12.2% per decade, compared to its average extent during the period from 1981 to 2010.
So I like to think that, like, you know, a lot of this, we're getting rid of sea ice. Like, ice sank the Titanic. Like, there should be no ice. You know, I say abolish ice.
I also say abolish ice, but only the government agency. Yep. We should not abolish Arctic ice.
Okay, typical liberal trying to play both sides.
Oh my God, walking the line. Please take a hard stance opinion there. Just lipping it up on this podcast.
You either get some ice or no ice, and it's up to you, but you can only choose one of those.
Man.
So I guess it's time to do a PSA here. So the parts of NASA that talk about climate change are probably just about to be shuttered. We're recording this episode, as I mentioned, on January 29th, Project 2025. I'm sorry, I think I added the word project in there. I can't read, but I can ad-lib. And within the last week, President Donald Trump, you know, the guy from Home Alone 2 Lost in New York, he's attempting to really elevate the levels of fascism and kleptocracy in the United States, and has issued a flurry of executive orders built to cancel a lot of federal spending. And scarce federal workers who don't agree with his vision for things are going to be out of their jobs, allegedly. So finding these data sources and helping catalog data and building networks of people who still want to help will be key to mitigating the already detrimental effects of climate change in the next few years, as well as understanding the impacts to come. If you're listening to this podcast, I would like to urge you in a few ways, but I would like to urge you to support groups like the Center for Climate Integrity at climateintegrity.org, as well as Citizens Climate Lobby at citizensclimatelobby.org. Their websites are in the show notes for the episodes that aired this weekend, as well as in our Beehive page, which is also in the links provided. What the fuck is a Beehive page? Here's the thing. You give me a fucking script to read, and I'm looking at a word I don't understand, and I'm just going to fucking read it because I'm dumb.
So, yeah, Beehive is an alternative to Substack. Basically, like...
Okay, that's a...
like, yeah. So, I know some people who like can't get away from Substack because like that's where they built their audience, and it is very hard to migrate there when you have a lot of people paying you through that service. But Substack has started paying Barry Weiss, to my understanding, and so I don't want to give Substack any fucking money.
No free promo.
And Beehive gives a little bit more money to the creators that use that service. So it's just a Substack alternative. But yeah, that'll be launched this weekend. And all of our show notes and links will be there. Not the whole detailed script, but like a fair amount of notes that you guys can read and kind of see what we're talking about.
Yes, it is incredibly important that there's somewhere to find information and somebody collecting that information. Here's the thing. I don't know if I've told Jins, but I feel like we are kind of doomed at the moment. Maybe we could talk about it on Crumbs, but I don't think anything we do right now is going to help.
We're a wee bit fucked. I think there are things that we could do to help. I think that the big important things are organizing with fellow workers and community and stuff like that, and organizing to shut shit down when it gets bad. Take care of people. Direct action and mutual aid always help, and also seize power. Like take over your fucking local zoning board. Zoning is where shit really happens for some reason.
That's not to say I think anybody should give up, but maybe like I feel like we've given the bad people all the rope in the world, and kind of we can't make any more moves until they start to hang themselves with it. So like, we should be preparing, but like,
I hope they do that.
It's inevitable. Fascism is a fucking fairy tale. You can't make things better by just squeezing some people more than others. It's a faulty promise, and like, it's never actually come to it fully. Hitler never won. There was never a point where he wasn't expanding and just had to like, okay, now we're just going to govern. It wouldn't have fucking work. This shit is a hollow fucking lie. So yes, if nobody could stop them and they do all the shit they want, everything's just gonna fall apart, and people are gonna be like, oh wait, you were lying this whole time. You're not actually gonna fix anything. I think we just kind of have to wait for that moment, because they're not gonna listen to us until all of a sudden they can't buy anything anymore and people are starving. But that's my 2 cents. I'm sorry.
God, I love that.
I think that time may be closer than we think. I don't know.
Yeah.
The one thing I will say to Donald Trump, to maybe not to his credit, but like, he sure is not just sitting around waiting anymore. He's making stuff happen. It is the bad stuff. It is all bad. It is horrible, but he's not doing incremental destroy the entire world. He's doing the speed running,
Sure is.
Good for him. I'm so sad.
He's a captain.
Anyways.
He's a Captain Planet villain. Let's continue our trip from the 1800s to the present and make a quick stop in 1960. And we'll spend the entire episode in the 1960s. In November of that year, 1960, Life magazine wrote a large article called New Portrait of Our Planet 2, which referenced findings from the International Geophysical Year. And I've never heard of the International Geophysical Year before, and honestly, it's pretty damn cool. It was a 1.5 year long massive research collaboration on 14 different earth science disciplines with researchers from all over the world, and it marked an end to a lot of international research being screwed up by the Cold War. This was undoubtedly a beautiful thing, and they did some writing on climate change within their research, which Life magazine decided to bring up. And the article says,
all right, just real quick. It's called the International Geophysical Year.
Yeah.
And they worked on it for a 1.5 years. So this is basically fake news. So take this with a grain of salt, listener. But anyways, the article says, quote, scientists emphasize that man unwittingly is carrying out the largest scale weather control experiment of all time by upsetting nature's balance of carbon dioxide. If there is an excess of this gas in the atmosphere, it forms an insulating blanket, warming the air by preventing the Earth's heat from radiating into space. Man is constantly burning coal and oil, which gives off carbon dioxide. He is turning forests, which absorb much carbon dioxide, into farmland, which absorbs little. Thus, he is adding 0.5% every year to the atmosphere's carbon dioxide.
Yeah, that wasn't a small event with small press releases. Again, Life magazine, which was then a fairly large publication, was covering it. Life magazine reached, during that time, roughly 250,000 of all Americans and was selling millions of copies. The singer of Steely Dan also wrote a song about the International Geophysical Year for a solo album of his. Everyone knew about this project. It was a big event, and we really can't pretend people weren't hearing about it, and thus hearing about climate change. I want to mention really quickly that this article also contained one of the most insane advertisements for whiskey I've ever seen, and I'm gonna just let the co-host react to this and describe it. You guys, tell me what you're seeing there.
That's a big bottle of whiskey,
and we will put this on the Patreon.
I see a good time. Crack that bad boy open.
This is like, you know how before McDonald's went woke, you could get like the double gulp or whatever the fuck, the like stupidly big
supersize.
Yeah, before woke killed supersize. This is like not even bigger than a regular bottle of whiskey like that. This is like cartoon levels. Okay, what I'm actually looking at, I apologize, I just now realized, is a man who has accidentally shrink rayed himself and is just carrying a normal sized bottle of whiskey. Never mind.
It is a man carrying a bottle of Fleischmann's whiskey that is the size of a very large 4-year-old. Like, yeah, it's massive. We will put this on the Patreon for people to see. But anyway, I want to keep it moving. We're going to go to 1965 next.
I thought we were going to stay in 1960 this whole episode.
No, just that decade. Just that decade.
I only packed for 1960. 65 is a whole different fucking, oh my God.
It is a whole different ballgame. 65 is the most fucked up year prior to this one.
What am I gonna do with all my? I'm voting for JFK paraphernalia. He's dead.
Oh my God. Yeah. Well, in 1965, LBJ is the president. The Vietnam War kicks off. Martin Luther King Jr. and 25,000 others march for 4 whole goddamn days. El Hajj Malik al-Shabazz, also known as Malcolm X, was assassinated. Norman Mason sets himself on fire outside the Pentagon to protest the Vietnam War. And Tom and Jerry debuts on TV. So at least
we covered all the important things.
Yep. Had to tack on that last one. I just looked through a list of interesting events in 1965, and Tom and Jerry was on there. And since we were talking about cats earlier, just talking about the good stuff. If you feel like you're living through too much shit at once, you can commiserate with any of your boomer relatives who remember 1965 and aren't complete jerks. Let's talk about PSAC. PSAC. Just had to say it. To give a little background first, we need to talk about the President's Science Advisory Committee, or the PSAC. This group was created in the late 1950s by Eisenhower, who was really pressed about how cool the Soviets looked when they pulled off the Sputnik 1 and Sputnik 2 satellites. A previous version of the committee existed since Harry Truman, but it was just the Science Advisory Committee and not the President's Science Advisory Committee.
I'm going to say, do you think like scientists in other countries go like, hey, these motherfuckers, hey, we just did that shit? Like, you think that they're hyped and they're like actively flipping off like middle schoolers, like, hey, y'all are trash? Because that's how I envision this. Like, I envision Eisenhower he's like, yo, they fucking launched the satellites. They launched 2 of them. And everyone's like, well, it's probably no big deal. And just over in Russia, popping bottles, just like, hey, not 1, 2 satellites.
I feel like the Russian kids were doing TikTok dances and shit.
They were calling us broke boys for not having satellites. Fucking broke boys, no satellites in space. We got 2 of them if you want to borrow one.
Now, since we're recording this just days after what is some are calling America's second Sputnik moment, a few things I just real quick. Did you know that right after Sputnik happened, like in a couple of weeks, there's this whole like campaign of Americans being like, nah, they faked that shit.
Yeah.
There's no fucking way they did that shit.
Yeah.
Disinformation, Russians are lying. Which leads me to my favorite reason that I think moon landing conspiracy theories are hilarious is that for the Americans to have lied about landing on the moon, that would require that the Russians would have like not checked.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're just, height of the space race, Cold War's going on. But the Russians, they just took our word for it. What?
I never thought about that before.
That's actually hilarious. There's not a scientist who's like, nah. Just imagine them like, no, you didn't. Prove it. Pixar
Like
didn't happen.
the entire Russian scientist community was just like, oh, well, they said they did. Pfft, we're done. They got us. Never mind. What are you? Sure.
To continue talking about the PSAC, which I will keep saying PSAC.
P is stored in the sack.
P is stored in the balls.
Stored in the sack.
The P is stored in the balls, and the P is stored in
the balls are the sack.
the balls
are in the sack.
in
So the
the
P is in the
sack
sack.
of the President's Science
balls are the sack.
Advisory
I did
Committee.
not know that.
The balls are in the sack. Look, I don't know much about soccer or anything. Is there a sack inside? You know what? We don't have time for this. Right in, listeners.
Tell us more about the balls, listeners.
Dick pics.
Yeah, no dick, just the balls. In 1965, the PSAC authored a report called Restoring the Quality of Our Environment. And this time, the staff was basically all academics. There are 38 pages of narrative, and the appendices take up another 255. This is a pretty serious document with a lot of sources. The appendices are absolutely packed with evidence, and it comes out swinging at previous bullshit that we discussed in the first episode without mentioning it by name. And remember, in that episode, we talked about people bullshitting about carbon cycles. We will roll the clip to refresh your memory. Dr. M.A. Matthews published an article called The Earth's Carbon Cycle, which was featured in the publication The New Scientists, which still exists today, and is a weekly pop science publication that's now owned by the Daily Mail. Fuck those guys. In Matthews' article, he tried to rebut Teller's address to the American Chemical Society. His argument hinges on the existence of carbon cycles where carbon dioxide is used by plants and taken up by calcium carbonate in the ocean to form calcium bicarbonate. And he goes on to say that there's newly discovered deposits of oil in Venezuela at the time, which he conclude indicate that nature is actually converting the carbon dioxide back into long-chain hydrocarbons, and therefore no harm, no foul. Or perhaps, even if our actions did have any contribution, that it was very minimal compared to the natural carbon cycle.
Wow, that was a great clip.
From the PSAC report. If another significant source of CO2 is assumed for the last few decades, it should have been observed. In fact, no increase in the biosphere has been noticed. Perhaps the most striking result is that the ocean takes up a relatively small fraction of the total added CO2, probably about 15%. In the past, the unusual scientific belief had been that by far the largest part of any would be absorbed in the ocean. This is undoubtedly true if we consider a sufficiently long time period of the order of thousands or even perhaps hundreds of years, because the ocean as a whole contains nearly 60 times as much carbon dioxide as the atmosphere. It goes on to reiterate, moreover, most of the oceanic carbon dioxide is present as carbonate and bicarbonate, balanced against metallic cations, and marked increase in oceanic CO2 therefore requires an increase in cation concentration, which can be brought about only by rock weathering or solution of calcium-rich sediments. These are slow processes.
You just broke my heart.
I know.
Cations?
But you know that.
Cations? Cations?
You know the worst part?
Fuck! All right, so it's cation.
I heard that word beating my ass because in my head I'm like, it can't be cations. That's just so on the nose.
No, because it's anions and cations. Anions are negative and cations are positive because cats make you feel fucking good.
Cats do make me feel good. Cats are a dope animal.
Cats are wonderful.
They fuck with you.
Yeah, I feel a positive ionic charge from a cat, and I don't even know what ionic means. I think it's a type of Lego. Go on.
For those of you out there who aren't scientists, which I suspect is a lot of our audience, this is
definitely them, not me.
This is referring to a process that scientists and engineers call mass transfer. My favorite illustration of mass transfer is coffee. When you're making coffee, you pour hot liquid all over the grounds, and the chemicals that make up your tasty wake-up juice, which were originally trapped in the grounds, are transferred into the water. They were in the grounds at a high concentration, and at first there was none in the water at all. As the water builds up up a larger and larger concentration of them, the transfer starts to slow down. Things moved from an area of high concentration in the grounds to an area of low concentration in the water until they reached some kind of equilibrium, where the material that was receiving the transfer is now saturated. What the scientists that wrote this report were saying is that the ocean is already saturated with CO2 and can't take it on unless something happens to produce additional calcium and other elements which, in their ionic state, will bond with more of the CO2 to make calcium carbonate and bicarbonate. In other words, the ocean is full of CO2 and it won't be taking any more in for a while, which is how I felt about alcohol when I quit drinking in 2024.
Calcium carbonate. What is that? Are we using that for anything?
Yeah.
What are we doing with calcium carbonate? Because, like, look, I'm looking for a new seasoning. I've been doing salt. I've been doing salt, pepper, garlic on fucking everything. Give me some calcium carbonate.
You ever bake a cake?
No, I'm an American.
What? You ever bake a muffin or a cookie?
I don't bake. I shoot things. Can I put calcium carbonate in my gun?
I mean, you could.
I have derailed the actual question that I had. I am fucking up my own curiosity, which is what is calcium carbonate?
So in food, it is effective at raising agents and pH regulators for baked food products. There is another name for calcium carbonate.
So this isn't just like a thing like how whatever salt has a chemical name, but then it's also, you could just be like, oh, you mean salt.
Yeah, no.
Okay. Because what I was going to say is, like, if there's something we could, like, you know, if we want to make more, we want there to be more calcium in the ocean. Okay.
Yeah.
You need more calcium in the ocean.
If you, like
to
me,
make more calcium carbonate. Okay.
Acid reflux, you have taken calcium carbonate.
Oh, shit. The Tums.
Calcium carbonate, baby.
I don't even drink anymore, and every time I go out anywhere, I just throw a Tums or two in that little change pocket that's in jeans. It's like, I'm not putting any fucking change in here, but I'll keep a Tums in there. And, like, here's the thing. Loose Tums out of the pocket, you would be shocked at how many random people have been like, I got heartburn, and I've pulled out a fucking lint-covered dusty Tums, and I've been like, yeah, I'll take that.
Yeah, heartburn is horrible. Calcium carbonate is helpful for that. Also, if you work in chemistry, calcium carbonate and bicarbonate are used to dial down the acidity of solutions. They're used to neutralize acidic materials.
Okay. So this is all starting to make sense. Like, the ocean is basically just like a recipe, and like, you got a little too much stuff in it. You're not going to be able to put any more fucking stuff in it unless you put something else to balance it out.
Yep. That's it.
All right, look, you don't have to be a scientist to get this shit. And what I'm saying is that I am so fucking stupid. If I can figure out a way to make this make sense, there is absolutely no excuse other than you don't want it to. For any of these fucking politicians or powerful people. So I want to go a little further into this document and read another quote to you, if that's okay, if I may.
Yep.
Quote, based on projected world energy requirements, the UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs has estimated an amount of fossil fuel combustion by the year 2000 that, with our assumed partitions, would give about a 25% increase in atmospheric CO2 compared to the amount present during the 19th century. End quote. They also go on to say that this should correlate with a temperature rise near the Earth's surface of about 0.6 to 4 degrees Celsius, which is 1.1 to 7 degrees Fahrenheit. Am I reading that correctly?
Yep. Yeah, it's a pretty big range in degrees Fahrenheit. Here, I will put some extra spaces in there. 1.1 to 7 degrees Fahrenheit and 0.6 to 4 degrees Celsius.
Well, what would go wrong if we had like a 4 degrees Celsius rise in surface temperature? That would be fine, right?
Nervousness.
Yes, stuff would start melting. You'd have, problems with acidity in the ocean. Things like coral would get fucked up, and then you'd fuck up the rest of the ecosystem. And then there's a lot of nonlinear shit happening.
Don't. As long as you're not going to tell me that, those initial problems couldn't cascade and snowball into an avalanche of other problems because every system on Earth is interconnected. But as long as you're not going to tell me
that is what I meant by nonlinear shit.
Motherfucker!
Oh, God. All right.
Why don't you tell me something good for a change?
No. Yeah. But they were pretty spot on with that calculation. So according to Berkeley Earth, the nonprofit that tracks land temperature data, the 31.8% rise in CO2 that we saw by that year correlated to a 0.85 degrees Celsius or 1.53 degree Fahrenheit rise in temperature by the year 2000. Good to note here that since 2000, we've also doubled that increase in temperature to put it in perspective with what we were talking about earlier. So that's great.
Wait. Have we doubled it in Fahrenheit or Celsius, though? Because, like, you know, one of those is obviously a lot worse than the other.
Both. I'm sorry,
What
those
did I
track
just
linearly.
Okay, whatever. You know what? Let Earth cook.
That is, yeah, that's kind of what we're doing. So that's great. They also went on to talk about how even small concentration increases over a few hundred years would melt the ice in Antarctica, which, you know, we just talked about. And if you're having any doubts about this document's computations, I mean, for one, they work out fairly well, although they didn't know about the existence of other greenhouse gases, nor did they know about how the energy sector and demands for energy would change so drastically over time, as well as the sectors that make methane more. And by that, we mean animal agriculture. Section 2 in the appendices is titled Detailed Computation, and they are, in fact, pretty goddamn detailed. As an engineer, I'm impressed, especially considering that when these computations were all performed, it was, you know, the 1960s. They didn't have advanced calculators and stuff. Like, these guys were just hammering home these numbers. It's pretty wild stuff. The link will be in the show notes if you are really interested in reading it. Like, it is a detailed document, and like when I'm putting together all of my notes for the show, like I am reading all of these old documents, including 200 pages of this crap. So
it's so crazy that like 60 years ago, they were able to like figure out these long form wild computations without having any computers or anything to assist them like that. But at the same time, they also were like, well, you know, I'm sure that like populations in third world countries will just stay the same forever. Like they had no idea, like, oh, the rest of the world will also stop having a ton of childhood deaths. And, you know, like they just didn't even account for like, oh, maybe places will have more people later.
Oh, we'll talk about the third world later.
I don't have any problem with that. I'm just saying like that it's weird that they were able to like so thoughtfully like map out how these kind of emissions things would go, but they never even like took into account that like, oh, there might be even more people.
Yeah.
So weird.
So in December,
you know what? Maybe it's not weird. Maybe it's just racist.
it's just racism.
They were like, yeah, there's no way brown people will ever figure out how to live.
It's just racism, I promise you.
Okay, that makes more sense and is also more upsetting.
Yeah. So in December 2018, Benjamin Franta with the Department of History at Stanford sent a letter to the editor of Nature's Climate Change Journal, which was published under the title Early Oil Industry Knowledge of CO2 and Global Warming. Contained within the letter was an excerpt of an address given by then president of our most favorite piece of shit trade organization, the American Petroleum Institute. The API's president at this point was a guy by the name of Frank Ikard, I-K-A-R-D. I don't know. Dumb name. Frankie Boy was a real piece of shit. He was a Dixiecrat congressman from Texas from 1948 to 1951, at which point he retired from his career making laws to go work for influencing them as an oil lobbyist. Despite the fact that he was a POW during World War II, I am not giving this dude a pass because, one, oil lobbyist, and two, he voted against the Civil Rights Act in 1957 and 1960, so fuck him. During his aforementioned speech, he said the following, referring to the extremely well-documented report from the PSAC that we talked about literally 5 minutes ago.
All right, I'm about to read this quote from somebody who you've just told me is a racist piece of shit. So there better not be any actual words that he said. And I think
no.
What I'm talking.
I would not put those in the notes
because you know I can't read ahead. That's not what I do here. Quote. Now, this report unquestionably will fan emotions, raise fears, and bring demands for action. The substance of the report is that there's still time to save the world's peoples from catastrophic consequences of pollution, but time is running out. This is not going the way I thought it was going to go. One of the most important predictions of the report is that carbon dioxide is being added to the atmosphere by the burning of coal, oil, and natural gas at at such a rate that by the year 2000, the heat balance will be so modified as possibly to cause marked changes in climate beyond local or even national efforts. The report further states, and I quote, I'm just now realizing I've been doing this voice for the parts I wasn't supposed to be doing it for. The pollution from internal combustion engines is so serious and is growing so fast that an alternative non-pollutant means of powering automobiles, buses, and trucks is likely to become a national necessity.
Yeah, this guy was reading the report and basically shitting his pants.
There's a part of me, and this could be like the Machiavellian part or like the Machiavellian part that I pretend exists in my mind, where you would think that this institute would be like, hey, we see this report, let's get in front of this and like make money off the pivot and let's look like the good guys.
It's literally the stupidest thing that America could have done in our, like, I mean, who knows at what point in our empire we're at, but like the fact that we had like a extremely early warning that like, oh, the way that we've industrialized has actually been kind of counterproductive to sustaining life long term. Like our Sputnik moment, it could have been, we're going to change the way that energy works before anybody else. China's fucking, they're doing like fusion shit with like, they're making an artificial sun, and America is like, we changed the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. Like we could have been the leaders. We knew this way before anybody else. And we're like we were the only country in the position in the 60s to be like, we're going to do everything we can to fix this. We put people on the fucking moon.
That's my point. It's like also like nuclear energy is probably the solution to like climate change in a big way, or like the energy resource. Sophia, please feel free to disagree or agree with that one. But
no, I honestly agree with that. I think that like obviously like we need like diverse energy portfolio. Like it makes sense to have like both nuclear, wind, solar, like kind of everything. But like if we could make it a bit faster to build up nuclear power, like there are certain kinds of reactors where you could at least spend down some of the waste, and it's certainly not as big of an immediate problem as something like coal-fired plants, which like just are causing massive problems. Like if you could bury some nuclear waste away for a couple hundred years and figure out how to deal with it, like that's probably, you're still kicking the can down the road a bit, but you're not killing everybody while you're doing it. So I guess, I don't know.
Also, the other point I was going to raise, and it was this guy, I don't know if anybody's seen it, but there's always this common thing with like people who want to institute change. Just to use like a derogatory, like they're the city slickers who are trying to stop like the quaint local life. And it's, what's old dumb fuck's name?
Frank Ickard.
Frank Ickard. All right, yeah. But just like even in that, hey, petroleum's like gonna be bad. I feel like without you even saying, I know what the response was. Like the disinformation is just like, oh, look at these blowhard scientists. Like,
yep.
Like, yeah, they read books and stuff, but in your heart what's good. Like, can you see the danger? No. And I don't know. There's just something about that, and I'll probably speak to it more.
Well, like, the way that the American psyche works, because everything in our culture is built on this like fucking faux, like this again fairy tale of individualism, of like, don't listen to the outside, it's about you are the only one, it's your, like, you pick yourself up by, you don't even need to convince people that anything's wrong. You just have to do enough to convince them to not trust an expert, and as soon as people start questioning something, you've already won. Like, there's no consistent alternative explanation for COVID. Yeah. It's just everybody's like, I don't believe the official story, and then you just go down your own path from there.
Yeah, you just undermine them, and then everything else falls into place. It
accomplishes the goal. They didn't even have to figure out an actual narrative that is an alternative. They just had to be like, don't trust those guys, and we're here.
I know. And it's just so weird because it plays into that, like, well, hey, you're already primed not to want to believe it. So as long as I tell you, hey, don't believe him, you'll be like, yeah, I shouldn't believe him. It's just like, bro, you did not do even the close enough to bare minimum groundwork. Like, that's an unearned opinion. Mm-hmm. It frustrates me. I know during a lot of these stories, it's probably going to get more frustrating, but that's always a point where I'm like, let the experts do their thing, folks.
We live in hell.
Experts do their thing.
We do live in hell. We do live in hell.
First timeline.
Yeah. So In 1967, the Clean Air Act, which was passed in 1963 and permitted the federal government to regulate air pollution, was in the process of being amended. The amendment was pretty large and included grants for air pollution control agencies in the individual states, expanded research, and authorized air quality standards, among a lot of other things.
Also, just time out. You gave a lot of things that happened in 1965. You didn't say shit about 1967, so I'm going to add something to it. 1967, the year the Big Mac wasn't created. Go on.
Is it really?
Yes, it is.
Oh, that's great.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. The Big Mac is my McDonald's sandwich of choice, so hell yeah. Love hearing it. Love hearing it.
I was a McGangbang fan.
McGangbang?
Oh.
What is a McGangbang?
We don't have time.
Oh, you've never heard of this?
No, we'll talk about this later. We'll talk about this
Yeah,
later.
this is a Crumbs thing.
And also, I'll eat it later.
Shout out to the fans.
All right.
If you know, you know.
Anyway, a man named Bruce E. Kessler, who was representing industry groups in the cement and mining industries, decided to throw his hat in and say that his industry is offering both warming and cooling, and therefore didn't need no goddamn regulations. And Devin, feel free to quote this chuckle fuck.
Perhaps it will be not out of place to close a serious discussion with a somewhat lighter note on the curiosity and consistency of the air pollution problem. It has been reported in learned scientific journals that carbon dioxide levels from burning fossil fuels is increasing in our atmosphere. And that is the increase in parallel by an increase in atmospheric temperature to a potential melting of the ice caps and inundation of our coastal cities. It has been equally scientifically, I might add, reported that the dust levels in our atmosphere is increasing, and by shielding us from the sun's rays, it's paralleled by a decrease in temperature to a predicted second ice age. Thus, it seems that the cement plant, which burns large quantities of fossil fuels and emits dust to the atmosphere, is the ideal device to maintain our ecological balance.
That was
Just
beautiful.
real quick, I want to say, I feel like our Bruce Kester and Frank Ickard, I feel like those two would be friends.
100% we'd be friends, my fellow chum.
We should do
you
just a
believe in climate
Patreon
change?
We should just do a Patreon episode that is a talk between the two of them. But also, I love this guy was like, well, we pollute in a way that heats the planet and we pollute in a way that cools the planet, so we're chill.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I know we're doing bad, but we make dust too, and that's like going up there too.
The cement industry is awful. According to a report from last year from the Center for American Progress, the cement industry is responsible for about 8% of global carbon dioxide emissions, and numerous studies, such as one in the show notes published by the NIH, shows a massive increase in hospitalizations for respiratory diseases for people who live around cement plants, especially for children. So, Bruce could go fuck himself. And
Yeah, fuck you, Bruce.
I found another guy who could go fuck himself as well here because, wow, let's chat about Thomas Clifton Mann for a second. He was a diplomat in Latin America during the Kennedy and Johnson administrations and advocated a policy in that sphere called the Mann Doctrine, named after himself, where a dictator in Latin America would not be judged by the U.S. government by how they treated the people that lived under them, but by how they treated U.S. interests, which generally translated to U.S. business interests specifically. This very much translates into him helping the CIA and others overthrow democratically elected socialist governments. Some noteworthy ones include
The government of Guatemala, led by President Jacob Arbenz Guzman in Guatemala at the behest of the United Fruit Company known as Chiquita Brands. The Fourth Brazilian Republic, led by João Goulart, which was left with the Brazilian military dictatorship afterwards. A successful manipulation of the politics of Chile in 1964 in order to defeat the popular socialist Salvador Allende. Allende won, however, during another election in 1970, and then got by the CIA. Anyways, when they did, coup to install the military dictatorship of Augusto Pinochet. And number 4, and more in Bolivia, Panama, and the Dominican Republic.
Yeah,
Salvador
there's a lot of
Allende.
coups.
I just have a question. Why don't those countries pull themselves up by their bootstraps?
Well, because we blew up their boot factory.
Yeah, it's because they tried to, and we were like, fuck you. They literally were like, we'd like to take over our own industries, and American companies were like, we'll fucking kill you.
It's because the CIA sent people down and gifted them with cement boots and then threw them in the river. Fun.
Sure did.
So they got a gift and yet couldn't pull themselves up. Yeah, sometimes the boots are made of cement and sometimes they're made of clouds. It doesn't matter. I respect someone who can pull themselves up by their own bootstraps. The American way. Stop being freeloaders.
Yeah, they should have rejected the handout. That's the problem. you know, we went down there. We're like, hey, we got these nice little cement shoes for you. And they should have been like, no, you know what? We don't need your fucking gift. You didn't even wrap this, and it's not even Christmas.
Yeah. After spending years overthrowing popular governments, he left the U.S. government to pursue a more noble career as the president of the Automobile Manufacturers Association. In late 1969, a statement of his was presented before the National Association of Manufacturers Congress of American Industry. In the text, Mann talks about all the research that had come out on the topic as if it were mere speculation, saying even a casual reader of the press these days can find equally conflicting scientific theories about almost any pollutant and their effects on plant and animal life, so long as the reader keeps clearly in mind that the distinction between speculation and theory on the one hand and established scientific fact on the other. Speculation is a useful tool in widening the horizons of knowledge. But speculation, which is presented as scientific fact with the aim of arousing people to political action, does not necessarily lead to the right conclusions. Fear is a poor counselor. And the problems with this are many. For one, Mann doesn't know a fucking thing about chemistry or thermodynamics or anything else relevant. He was a lawyer and a nepo baby of another lawyer, and frankly, everything he did was just to advance the stranglehold American capitalists had on the planet, which is somehow less than we can say for some of these weasels we've discussed and will continue to discuss in this arc, who have actually some, goddamn credentials. And that's the end of this episode, guys. How do you feel? Worse?
I feel
Worse?
like I definitely feel bad. I do. We've been meeting a lot of really fun characters, and I just want to say that like the only thing that bums me out is I bet all these dudes have got to experience smoking a cigarette on a plane at one point in their lives, and I've always wanted to do that. So, no matter how fucked up they are, like they got to live my dream.
We'll get a private plane one day just to smoke.
Even though if I permanently quit smoking, I promise you that every time I get on a plane, I will bring a pack of cigarettes with me, because if that plane even shows the slightest chance of going down, I'm sparking up a ciggy and I'm going out in style.
Is anything you guys want to plug or talk about before we end the episode and go to Crumbs? I know, Devin, you probably have to go, but me and Andrew can do a Crumbs.
Just listen to Worst Week Yet. We have a lot. We've been talking about a lot. There's so much news.
This actually was the worst. This actually was the worst week yet. Like you should say that this last episode was the definitive episode. Like that's the one.
Here's the thing: is that I hate to break it to you, but the reason why the show is called The Worst Week Yet and not The Worst Week Ever is because while last week was the worst week of all time, it will be outperformed by next week and every subsequent week for time immemorial.
Oh God, it's like the Simpsons week, the Simpsons meme. This is the worst day of my life. And it's like, no, this is the worst day of your life so far.
Yep. That is literally the premise of the show. And you know what? Still has never stopped an announcer at a comedy show from bringing me up as the host of The Worst Week Ever. So it's fine.
Amazing.
Davin Dubois, you got anything to plug?
I just want to tell everybody, y'all put your mouth guards in. It's going to be a fight, proverbial one, to make a kinder, better world. But in that fight, find moments of joy and clarity, because you can't burn yourself out. And even if that moment is like crying with someone, do that. Also, fuck bitches, get money.
Hell yeah.
Two very, very good pieces of advice. I guess three.
I'm trying to remain really positive. I know a lot of our listeners are deeply affected. People I love and care about. But yeah. Also, subscribe to our Patreon.
Hell yeah. Patreon.com.
Great plug. Great plug.
/ the Crumbling Podcast.
Yep.
That's it.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, that's the Patreon. And I'll plug really quickly that we are also going to be working on a spin-off that's coming out soon. Actually, kind of two of them that will be on YouTube. One of them will be more of a current events that need context kind of thing. So there's a lot of shit that happens that I feel like people may have memory hold the events that led up to them, and they're small little bits, little snippets of things that don't necessarily fit into the show, but kind of fit the whole narrative. So it's a tiny little spin-off. I'll be putting those on YouTube, and probably get the first one out by the time this episode is on all of the streaming platforms, but not before we get it on Patreon. Sometime in between those two things.
It'll be somewhere someday.
And also working on another one, which will be tiny little baby shorts about whether or not people are really evil or grifters. And so we'll just be looking at, figures in contemporary media and looking at them on a chart and saying, are they full of shit or are they just stupid? I've been
I like that.
I've been
like
compiling
that.
this information for a while, and I have a chart. I have a chart of right-wing figures and where they fit on that chart. And there's two axes. One of them is whether they're a true believer or not, and the other one is whether or not they're just fucking dumb.
That's interesting.
And some
'Cause,
people,
like,
some
I
people
feel
are a
like-
little both.
I feel like almost everybody is kind of both, but it's just which end of the spectrum are they closer to? Like,
Yeah.
Oh, that's fun. Like somebody like Laura Loomer is absolutely a true believer, but
she's very
undeniable that it's undeniable that she's very dumb, but it's also undeniable that she does a lot of stuff specifically she knows to increase her. It's maybe not money, but attention.
Yeah. Some of them are pure grifters, and some of them are like actually evil and like kind of smart. So you have guys like, Stephen Miller, like pretty smart guy, and also like absolutely the vision of evil. Same with like Steve Bannon. Like these are like very well-read, well-educated men that are like quite intelligent, but are fucking evil. Like they know what they're doing is evil. Like they are in the category of comic book supervillains, where you're like, oh, this is the bad quadrant. So basically, like I've made a new political compass about other people, and we can put this on Crumbs if you want, but. Yeah, I made a political compass about people that are in our political establishment and whether or not they're either, like troopers or grifters or just kind of dumb or a little bit of both. Like, yeah, Laura Loomer, definitely a true believer, but also very stupid. Marjorie Taylor Greene, true believer, also dumber than fucking rocks. But there's a lot of people that fall somewhere in between, like RFK Jr., like he vaccinates his kids. Like he's not a true believer. Like that guy does not believe what he's saying. He's also not that smart, and he's fucking crazy. Like he'll cut the head off a whale.
No, he will find a beheaded whale and love it.
And put the head on his car for his daughters.
Wait, no, he did cut the head off because it was just a full beached whale. Oh my god. Yeah, we can talk about that more, but we should end the main show so that we can transition into doing Crumbs. So, listeners, thank you again for joining the Crumbling.
Thank you.
Yeah.